Have you ever felt caught in the in-between? As if you were stuck in a space between spaces, a realm of confusion. Something strange happens on the precipice between places or rooms. But this is not a new idea. It's popularized by the new movie Backrooms and these YouTube videos that have been spreading in the last decade or so. The idea of a gateway, a threshold with deep psychological meaning. There's most definitely themes of horror and fracturing going on and loss of meaning. I'll explore those, but I'll also explore what I believe to be a positive connotation with this liminal horror, with this fear of the threshold, the in-between world. There's something that occurs in dreams, and I'll explore that later in this video. First off, a threshold is defined as the point or level where something begins, changes, or an event occurs. You can think of it like a physical boundary. Now, in the context of things like the Backrooms and this liminal horror phenomenon, it's about being stuck in this in-between realm. Think about a house or an apartment. Two different parts of reality. You'll have a living room and then a bedroom right next to each other, and both having clear purposes. You sleep in one and kind of hang out in another. But between them, you have the hallway. Its purpose is this more ambiguous space. It's less defined. A crude floor plan would look like two rooms next to each other, two squares separated by a line. The hallway existing as this line is this space between spaces, the liminal, which the word liminal is derived from the Latin word limen, literally translating to threshold. But imagine stumbling onto a glitch in reality. Decades ago, video game developers came up with a kind of hack. It was a way of altering the collision detection in a video game to help players familiarize themselves quickly with a video game map, an area, and they could walk through walls and just see everything and just go through it rather than following the linear story-led path. Now, they called this no clipping, where the collision detection was sort of hacked or turned off, which brings us to the original creepypasta post of the Backrooms photo, which read, "If you're not careful and you no clip out of reality into the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, and the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." Kane Pixels is the famous YouTuber who took this creepypasta and built videos, an entire YouTube channel based on this sort of lore that was established in that post. And it's interesting because the character Clark in the Backrooms movie that was just released, actually directed by that YouTuber who sort of expanded that lore, he finds the Backrooms by actually finding a weird light source that caught his attention, and when he went to press against the wall, his hand went through it. It was actually a doorway-sized entrance into this Backrooms, this endless liminal office space that leads to more office spaces, and the further you go into it, the more strange architecture, entities, and just nonsensical things exist in it, as it's mostly empty though. That's the strange, probably one of the more unsettling parts of this lore. It's almost like listening to a piece of music that doesn't resolve. You know, you have this build up to a melody, and you'll typically, towards the end of the verse part or chorus or whatever, you'll have this, and it'll just resolve. It's one way to look at it. It's this, you're in these in-between transitionary spaces that just go on forever, seemingly. And I will say I found the movie extremely interesting. I'm not necessarily going to deep dive the movie. This is more just about the phenomenon of the Backrooms emergence, this thing that has existed in the unconscious mind and mythology for so long. I mean, these ideas are old. I've heard a few people mention it, but it relates to the Minotaur in the maze. You have in that, because of an unnatural union between a bull and a woman who was sort of coerced by the gods, she gave birth to a half-breed, and a genius inventor created a maze, very complex maze to trap the beast near the center. A certain number of people were led into this maze at certain times of the year to appease the beast and appease the gods. In the movie, there are entities walking around. From what I can tell, this place mimics human memory, which is extremely interesting. It's almost as if it's a memory of a place, and it's not, and then it re-remembers. It's like the telephone game. I don't know if you've ever heard that analogy, but you have a line of people and someone gives a simple sentence, and each time it passes on, things get forgotten. And by the end of that, if you've ever done this exercise in school or whatever, by the end of it, so many things are changed about it, it's lost its original meaning. And that's what's happening with the Backrooms. The Backrooms is remembering, and then it does not have the remembrance of the original thing or the original thing to go off of, so it remembers. Everything becomes a copy of a copy, and each time it loses details, it loses meaning. The beings in this space are just nonsensical, multiple faces, very, very strange. They don't speak. They don't really have coherent thought. As far as the Minotaur goes, and if you haven't seen my video on the Minotaur and the maze, this is what's fascinating, because I made that a few months ago, and my sort of solution, not to give it away, but I explore this deeper in the video, that the solution to the maze itself is memory. That it was the saving grace of the escape from the maze. And go check that out, how in the myth they used memory. There's a lot of symbolism, and there's a cool metaphor in there about that. But memory is what saves you from, a solid, coherent memory. It's something that we take for granted, the fact that we can traverse and conquer problems and resolve conflicts, and we remember how we did it, and that becomes part of us, and we just sort of take that for granted. That ability, that coherence, it's the logos, it's the thing that holds us together. It's that structure, and we just take it for granted, because we take it for granted until someone starts to have memory problems, and it's so tragic and so incredibly hard to see someone go through that, because it's so devastating. And in those circumstances, we kind of see how that is just so devastating to our psyche and our mind. But yeah, we tend to take it for granted. But if you haven't seen that, I'll click up above. I'll put it here. But and we also have to take into account that Native Americans, Native tribes all over the world talk about. I mean, look at the Irish myths. They talk about the fairy realm, these places that you are supposed to be they had a very strict coherence to respecting nature and respecting certain spaces, or even avoiding certain spaces, because of the possibility, or they would just outright say in some of their myths, this area is a doorway to another world. It's this, like the no clipping concept of these YouTubers that have used it, in gamers in the past. It's that same concept, that same archetype coming back, but in a modern sense. I thought that was fascinating. But you have all these stories of lost time. Look at Rip Van Winkle. He wandered into the mountains and fell asleep on a hillside and woke up 100+ years later. Very strange. And those relate back to the old Dutch and Irish, Irish fairy tales, and the old Dutch settlers brought their mythology with them, and they had a deep kind of respect for entities and fairies that lived in the woods, and all kinds of, and trickster figures, that would just, and strange liminal realms where you could step out of time. I believe they have explored that in some of the Backrooms mythology, that, you know, the time moves differently in certain sections of the Backrooms, so that those themes are there. Something happens when you just extend yourself out and say to yourself, well, you know, it sounds fanciful. It sounds like, you know, it sounds like nonsense, but when you start to think, what if, and you start to consider the possibility, something changes. You know, it's what if there is credence to some of these stories. It's just, it could relate to higher dimensions, you know, higher dimensional beings and higher dimensional worlds, lower dimensional worlds, that there's sort of a nexus point, you know, where these things connect. It would make sense these would exist if that is in fact what they are, and what's kind of happening with this phenomenon. I want to talk about what really drew me to this, because I'll be honest, that I've had probably, in my memory, I've had at least a handful of very distinct dreams where, I'll give you one example. I had a dream where I was in my childhood home, and out of nowhere, there was an entrance to an attic in the ceiling. We didn't have it. I think we had a crawl space above, but there was no attic. But it was there, a big doorway and a ladder. I think we got a ladder or something. You know, I got access to it, and somehow I just knew it was there, and that it hadn't been explored in a very long time, or I knew this prior to entering the space. And when I got up there was all this loft, huge space, you know, this huge space with windows, cobwebs though, which told me that it reaffirmed my belief that it just hadn't been used. It had been unused, this unused space of, you know, this building, and it was just there, and it felt completely plausible. It was so strange, you know, and it was kind of big and empty, and it was sort of like a loft space with a window too. There was a window, which was cool, and it was just, as I'm exploring it, it was kind of exhilarating. I was remembering it, but at the same time, I knew subconsciously, you know, I knew this was here that all this time. I knew it, and it was almost like reminding myself, something in my unconscious mind, and it led to other rooms and connected to a place nearby, into other rooms laterally. It just kept going up, and and I've had similar dreams with this similar theme, and I would just explore someplace and it would just go on. You know, it didn't make sense physically because the building that they existed in was small. And, you know, my interpretation of that, this was around the time that I hadn't even tried. It was in my early 20s. I was having these dreams, and I hadn't yet I put my creative efforts on the back burner for a very long time. And this started happening around the time that I bought a guitar and a keyboard, and I hadn't drawn in years or painted, and I bought the supplies, but they were sort of collecting dust for a few months. You know, it's like this, I had this ambitious kind of drive to pursue all these creative efforts that I left on the back burner, but I took these things and just sort of had them, I was procrastinating about it. And it was almost like this dream was telling me that these spaces, it was like my mind, or my soul, if you will, and you know, it was telling me that there's this untapped potential. There's all this room, you know, these parts of my mind that I'm not exploring or not using, you know, or haven't used in a while, and it's there. It was just telling me that it felt as if the dream were trying to tell me that it's there, it's real, and it was just, and I believed it. It was like a part of me telling me that, and then and it was like a integration of an idea of making use of this liminal space that I was imagining. But that was maybe a metaphor for something deeper. But that's kind of more of a positive aspect, and one of the reasons that I'm drawn to the Backrooms, because it's very the potential. It's like endless potential that I see in that. I guess that's the positive connotation that I draw from like all these liminal horror things and stuff like that. And I really dig the creepy vibe and all that stuff, but there is a positive aspect to this stuff. It's almost as if there are spaces that exist. There's so much room in between spaces, and spaces can be and by spaces I mean the potential of the individual, the mind, the soul, all of that. There's space for growth, and maybe the growth has already happened, but you have not utilized and use those spaces, and perhaps you've forgotten, and maybe you are taking them for granted. But tell me about your dreams. I love to hear about people's dreams and trying to figure out why these images are just sort of thrust upon them. You know what I mean? It's just a strange, because I don't think that I think the mind can throw random information out. I mean, I think that's the main purpose of dreams, is you're just all the information you've taken in for the day in the short term. That one day is being mapped onto the mosaic that your mind is painting over multiple days and years and months, and just it's trying to paint it on there and find a place. So it's as you're putting it into the painting of all your information, your view of the world, all of that, it just bumps up against other stuff, and random stuff can pop in. But I also think that if you put trust in the fact that maybe your mind is trying to tell you something, and you quiet your mind and listen, I mean, dream interpretation can be pretty fascinating and a positive thing. But thanks for hanging out and listening to me ramble on about this. I did not have a very coherent script written for this one, but I've got tons of stuff on the way. Check out some of my other work here if you're into myth. I cover a lot of stuff, and I guarantee if you go check out the page, you'll find something. If you scroll through, you will find something you're interested in. So I am very appreciative of your time, and I will see you all in the next one.